Welcome back to my studio. Today we're painting this fun winter wonderland scene, and we're starting out by penciling in very lightly the hills and mountain in the background. If you don't yet have a kneaded eraser, I highly recommend one, as they are very, very gentle to the watercolor paper. For this next step, we're wetting down the background of our winter scene all the way down to that soft V in the center of your paper. For the colors we're using today, I'm using a color called Black Grape, and it's a bluer black, but you can use any black or dark blue that you have. And I'm mixing it in with a little bit of, it looks like a phthalo blue. It's labeled as just blue in my Rosa Gallery set, but to me it looks more like a phthalo blue. But any blue will do, ultramarine blue, cobalt blue. I have the blue mixed with water, and I'm gently putting it into the painting to look like a little bit of sky and cloud up towards the top of the painting, and then bringing my sky and cloud down towards that very top, very light line that you see of the mountains or hills in the background. For this next step, we're going to be making the trees, and I'm using my darkest mix of mainly black with a little bit of blue. And at first, I'm putting in the line of where I would like the trees to be. As you can see, the wet paper area is above the tree line, and then that stark white dry paper area, which will be snow, is below the tree line. And this allows for that water to help the paint to flow up into it to make the look of kind of misty, wintry trees. And for these trees, I'm trying to make it look like a pine forest. So I'm making little brush strokes just straight up and down. I'm making just little downward strokes so that it gives you the feeling of pine trees out in the distance. If you wait for the paper to dry completely before doing this, you'll have very distinct brush strokes at the top for the top of the pine trees. But if you do it while wet, then you'll have more of a soft, wet on damp or wet on wet drying effect towards the top, which gives it a bit of an atmospheric perspective. We're going to be salting our trees, salting our forest, and giving it a texture with this fine ground table salt. We'll be giving it a texture that gives it a look of snow on the pine trees in the forest. Once your trees are completely dry, you can remove the salt with your fingernail or with a butter knife or with a dry paper towel, as long as the painting and the paint that is on the salt is completely dry. It will come off nicely, and you can blow it away, brush it away, and it will give you this lovely textured look. With just water, we're creating the look of mountains far in the distance and creating just a slight mountain shape, a basic just stripe out in the distance of water with just a little bit of a wobble. And then we're combining a little bit of that black and a little bit of the blue. And we're going to go along the very bottom edge of that mountain shape in the distance. This doesn't have to be done perfectly. Just kind of slide it along, drop it in, and that paint will flow up into the water and create a very beautiful, soft, snowy day, wet on wet mountain in the distance effect. We will be going back later and adding a bit to this mountain, but for now, just make sure that it's the shape that you want it to be and that you have the blue or the blue-gray to be a little bit softer than the trees in the foreground. That way it looks like it's in the distance, a bit of atmospheric perspective. And now I am blocking off an area where I will be writing Merry Christmas, as I am using this as a holiday card. And to do that, I just used 2 pieces of the low tack painting tape or art tape. I found it on Amazon. I think it was about $6 for a roll. I'll put it in the comments, but it works very nicely. It does not tear up your paper when you take it off. Then putting just a little bit of water and blue and a little bit of gray, well, watered down black to make it look gray onto your paper. Just back and forth swishes. It gives it the look of the shadows in the snow, with the darker shadows, the darker snow, being the snow closest to you or closest to the bottom of the painting. This also adds to the atmospheric perspective where it looks like the darker snow is closer to you and the lighter snow is farther away towards the trees. Just have fun with this, with your wet areas, adding in colors. You could take away colors. And then for those mountains in the background, I'm adding a little bit of that watered down gray-blue to make it look like a more distinct shape of a mountain in the background. And then I decide to add just a little bit more color into the very base of that mountain area to make that snow pop more that's in between the trees and the mountains in the background. This is a fun part, in my opinion. It might seem you might be a little nervous about this part. It might seem a little daunting, but all you need is a leftover spice jar or mason jar, a small one. However large you want your ornament to be, whatever size you want it to be, that's the size of the jar that you want. And you're going to paint the rim of the glass jar and place it so that it's kind of halfway in your painting. I would have liked to move mine down maybe a little bit, but I do like that it has the tops of the trees in it as well. And once you have placed it on your paper with just water on your brush, you're gently teasing the edges of that black rim. Kind of looks like a watermark, like you set your coffee mug down on your homework or your children's homework or grandchildren's homework or your magazine. But it creates a really beautiful effect. And you go along that circle with just water on your brush, wiping off if you get too much paint on your brush. And you can rinse out your brush so that you just have clear water on it again, and dab it on your paper towel a bit so you don't have too much water. And you'll go around and just tease the paint from that circle, from that rim, just the inside edge of that paint. And in circular motions, so you're making it look like it's a glass ornament. You're just moving that water around and collecting the paint from those edges. I left a dry area in the center. You can also use a paper towel and the areas that you have wet, pick up that paint, pick up that water with your paper towel, and that will give you a lighter area, especially if you've moved too much of the paint around and it's hard to see anything through your ornament. Picking it back up with a paper towel really works well. But once you get it to a place where it kind of gives you that 3D effect, you want to go ahead and stop. You don't want to overdo it too much. You can see there that I had a little too much of that paint flowing out into the wet area. So I picked it right back up with the paper towel. And I continue to fiddle with it just a little bit too much. But I do like how it looks where I picked it back up with the paper towel and the tree line. I think that really does help it to look like a glass ornament. Once you think you're finished and the sky of your painting is completely dry, we are putting in a pine branch by first using just water. This might seem silly, but it really helps to give your pine branch a looser, more flowy watercolor effect. So after using just the water, now I'm using that black grape color that's been mixed with just a little bit of blue. You can use just black as well. And I am flicking these short little lines, which give it the look of pine needles. I then pick up some gray on the brush, add a little more water to the brush, mix it in with the blue, so it's a blue but mixed with a little bit of the black. And then I do the same short little flicks, short little strokes with just the very tippy top, that little tiny tip of this brush. And I don't want to add too much of the blue where you can't see the gray anymore or that watered down black anymore, but just enough to make it look like the branch is a bit fuller. If you're going to make your painting into a Christmas card or a holiday card, now's a great time to write Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year. I end up using a painter's marker. It's in metallic gold and it's the ultra fine point. For the ornament string, I'm using a clear ruler, which I think really helps so that you can see you're getting to halfway in whatever image you're trying to dissect. And in this case, it really helps so that it looks like the string is coming up from the center of the ornament. And I'm using that same painter's marker in the gold metallic and putting in just a little, almost like a half circle or a half oval on the top, filling it in. I'm putting just a tiny little circle on top of that. And then I'm also adding a few little lines here and there on that pine branch just to add a little sparkle to the top. And then I'm going along the edge of the ornament and drawing in just a little metallic gold line just on the underside of the ornament and coming up a little bit higher on the left-hand side. And then I have my Cotman metallic watercolor paints. Any metallic watercolor paints will do. I'm very gently placing the metallic gold watercolor in the lighter areas of the glass ornament, going around and then in the center a little bit as well, just a little bit, because you don't want to paint over everything, just here and there, leaving areas unpainted so that some of that bright white from the snow in the background is still coming through, and also some of that salted snow texture of the trees is still coming through. When you're finished with that, the next step, if you wrote in Merry Christmas or if you just had it a blank snowy field, you'll want to put in some color towards the forefront so it makes it look like the snow closest to you is a little bit darker. There's a little bit more of maybe a shadow. And then as the snow goes back into the distance, it gets lighter and lighter. In the darker blue area, you can see how I added some water, which gave it a kind of a blooming effect. And I think that's always fun when you're dealing with snow or a water scene. I did leave the area right behind the Merry Christmas brighter just so it's easier to read the text. When you take off your tape, just remember to pull at an angle away from your paper to help not tear your paper. And then there you have it. You're done with your Christmas card or your holiday winter scene. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope you get a chance to try it out for yourself. And I'll see you next time.